Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer. If you've been following the tech world lately, you know the generative AI landscape is completely overwhelming. It's constantly shifting, and keeping track of every new tool, well, it kind of feels like trying to drink from a fire hose. But today, we're cutting through all that noise. We're using a really brilliant framework from Brolly Academy that demystifies this whole space, helping us understand not just what these tools do, but exactly how they work under the hood. So, if you've ever actually tried to count them, you might be totally surprised to learn there's no single fixed number. You might hear one person say there are 4 types, while someone else swears there are 6. No wonder it feels so confusing, right? The answer actually changes based on whether you're classifying the architecture, the task, or the application. But don't worry, we are going to clear up that confusion right now. To make sense of it all, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll demystify generative AI. Then we'll look at the 2 main ways to classify it. Third, we'll break down the main model architectures, followed by content and output types. And finally, we'll talk about choosing the right model.
All right, part 1, demystifying generative AI.
The crucial difference here really lies in the output. You see, traditional predictive AI is all about classifying data or predicting an outcome, like scoring a sales lead or figuring out if an email is spam. Generative AI is a whole different ballgame. As Brolly Academy explains, it's a branch of AI that actually learns patterns from existing data to produce brand new content. It's basically the difference between an AI that can recognize a photo of a cat and an AI that can paint you a completely original picture of a cat in the style of Van Gogh.
Moving right along to part 2, 2 ways to classify. To really wrap your head around this ecosystem, Brolly Academy suggests splitting your thinking into 2 buckets: model architecture and output modality. Think of it like a car. The architecture is the engine under the hood. It's how the content is actually generated. The output modality, on the other hand, is the type of vehicle you drive, which you actually get at the end, like text, images, or code. People get so confused when they mix these 2 up, literally comparing an engine to a steering wheel. So we're going to keep them perfectly separated.
Okay, part 3, the main model architectures. Let's pop the hood.
First up, we have transformer and autoregressive models. These are the absolute heavyweights, the engines powering the massive large language models we use every single day for text and code, chatbots, translation, you name it. They rely heavily on something called self-attention mechanisms. What they do is incredibly powerful, but conceptually simple. They generate a sequence just by predicting the next element based on the previous context. They are highly scalable and just incredibly flexible. Now, what's really fascinating here is the competition aspect. Generative adversarial networks, or GANs, work by pitting 2 neural networks against each other. You have the generator trying to create fake samples, and the discriminator trying to catch those fakes and distinguish them from real training examples. Through this intense rivalry, the generator gets exceptionally good at creating incredibly sharp synthetic images and visual transformations. Next, we've got variational autoencoders, or VAEs. These are highly structured probabilistic models. Basically, they use an encoder to map data into a probability distribution in a latent space, and then a decoder samples from that space to generate new data. Because they create this smooth, continuous latent space, VAEs are super useful for control generation, representation learning, and synthetic data applications. It's less about competition here and more about highly structured probability. Then we have diffusion models, which take a completely wild approach. They learn a generative process by first looking at data that's gradually corrupted with static noise, and then they learn exactly how to reverse that process. They literally learn to turn random noise into structured, beautiful outputs. Because of this denoising superpower, this architecture has become the absolute gold standard for generating high-quality images, video, and audio. Finally, rounding out our engines, we have flow-based and flow-matching models, which learn transformations between probability distributions and are huge in modern research. But the reality is, modern AI isn't always just one pure thing. Hybrid and multimodal foundation models are where the industry is totally heading right now. These systems combine different architectures, like using transformers for language and diffusion for media, wrapping them into one single powerful system that can handle text, images, audio, and video all at once.
Which brings us to part 4. Content and output types.
The generative AI ecosystem operates on a massive scale. I mean, it's not just chatbots. We're looking at text for drafting and summarizing, image generation for creative design, video for moving visuals, and audio for synthetic voice and music. But it goes way further into highly technical fields too, like generating software code, creating 3D assets, and generating synthetic data for simulations.
And of course, multimodal workflows that seamlessly blend all of these together. To make this concrete, let's map the tools you probably use every day to these categories. ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and Anthropic's Claude completely dominate the text and multimodal space. If you want high-quality images, you're looking at ecosystems like Dolly, Midjourney, or Stable Diffusion. And for code, Microsoft Copilot is the prime example. You definitely recognize these famous names, but the key takeaway here is to remember that these are just the applications, the polished products built on top of those underlying architectures we just explored. ChatGPT is the product. The transformer is the architecture.
All right, part 5, choosing the right model. So Brolly Academy suggests a highly structured 4-step approach for choosing what to use. Step 1, figure out exactly what output you need and what the quality standard is. A casual brainstorming tool has totally different needs than a customer-facing chatbot, right? Step 2, consider your compute cost, speed, and the level of human review needed. Step 3, evaluate your data privacy and security limits. And only then, step 4, match the technical architecture to your specific task. Don't just choose a model because it's trending on social media. Choose it because it fits these criteria.
I really want to emphasize this crucial takeaway directly from the source material. There is no universal best architecture. Let that sink in for a second. The right choice depends entirely on a delicate balance of output quality, controllability, speed, data, and cost. It is 100% dependent on the problem you are trying to solve. At the end of the day, understanding not just how to use the tools, but the technologies and model architectures behind them is what separates a casual user from a true, future-ready AI practitioner.
It's an incredibly exciting world to navigate, isn't it? We've separated the engines from the vehicles, and we've demystified the tech behind the magic. With this robust taxonomy from Brolly Academy in your toolkit, you're perfectly equipped to make the right choice for your next big project. So, I'll leave you with this provocative thought. Now that you actually know how the engines work, what are you going to build? Think about your specific workflow, look at the architectures we covered today, and take that first step toward mastering the tools of tomorrow.